So everybody is has their videos off. Got some connecting.
Here comes Steve.
Oh, okay, good. Right. I should let Eileen know that Steve's on. Oh, me of little faith, huh?
I am.
Hello. Where's your face?
I choose not to do that. People have said I have a great voice for radio, and I'm quick to say, and a face for radio.
So we can't see your face this whole time, really?
How's that?
There he is.
Yay! Thank you. Okay.
No, thank you.
What'd you say?
I said, no, thank you.
All right. Anybody else coming in?
Yep.
We're admitting everyone right now, Steve.
That sounds ominous.
I know.
You mind if I have a little Cliff Bar?
Not at all. You can make breakfast. I don't care.
This is my breakfast.
Yeah. With what? What are you drinking?
Duncan.
Duncan. Oh, cheers. Cheers for Duncan. I like the way they dropped the name Donuts. Now it's just Duncan.
Marketing 101.
I know. I know it. Is everybody on, do we think?
There's some people coming, but
All right. Come on, let's see faces. Put your videos on. Come on, people. I'm going to be pushy today because I can be.
Supervisor Miller, how are you?
Come on, Dave, unmute.
Getting there. I'm good, Steve. How are you?
He makes me call him supervisor as opposed to Dave.
All right. Well, let me start by saying good morning, everyone. Nice to see you again. Hi, Susan. I think we should just do this all the time, no matter what. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to. And Kitty, do you want to do the introductions while you're still here, or do you want me to do them?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Sounds like you're ready.
Well, I kind of am, but to a very dear friend before he became an assemblyman, Mr. Steve Hawley. Well, you've been a friend of mine for a long time. So, and it's been a pleasure having the privilege of knowing you as a person and as a public servant. And we were sad that you couldn't participate last week in our We the People Day. And the team agrees that it's really important that the class gets to know you and ask you any question that they want to ask you, and you can share with them. So why don't you start by just giving us a little bit of your background and what took you to the public service realm of the world?
How much time do we have? I'm over 50.
Well, we've slated about an hour to an hour and a half for this session, so go for
Great.
it. All right.
I'll tell the people outside to hold off.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Hawley. I was born and raised right here in River City. Went to high school here. Went out on a wrestling scholarship to the University of Toledo, Division I school in Ohio. Promptly broke my ribs in my first match against Bowling Green University, and joined a fraternity and studied some and partied some. My father, after I'd graduated from school, called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come back and run the farm? I'm going to run for the New York State Assembly." And so that's what I did. He follows a long line of our family who have viewed living in a community as part of living in a community is giving back to the community. I guess that's the way to say it. My great aunt her name was Ella Hawley Crossett. Her name is on the plaque on women's suffrage as you walk into the state capitol off of State Street, along with Susan B. Anthony. She has a plaque up in Warsaw, where our family is originally from, next to the library on Main Street, for her efforts for women's suffrage. In the same vein, on the other side of the family, my grandmother Simpson, who was from Lyons, New York, my mom's mother, spoke at the first women's suffrage gathering in Seneca Falls with her 1-year-old daughter, not my mom, but my aunt. And 100 years later, my aunt spoke there and was there for the second time when she was 102, almost 102 years old. My great-grandfather, Frank Morris, served with Franklin Delano Roosevelt as the Commissioner of General Services all the years that FDR was governor. And then my grandfather, Hawley, was not an elected official, but served as the first president of the New York State Farm Bureau, and was on the American Farm Bureau Board of Directors. Also did Radio Free Europe broadcasts for President Eisenhower. They were good friends. And so it's been something that we've always done. We think is important, giving back to the community. And so when I came back from college, I started working on the farm. We expanded to a 1,500 acre farm with 1,500 hogs, farrow to finish. And then in the early 80s, I herniated 2 discs in my back. And as Dave Miller knows, he and I were involved in the hog business at the same time, as was his brother, Charlie. So I had to figure out what I could do physically, and I chose insurance. I've been in the insurance business ever since. I bought an insurance agency from a gentleman whose family founded in 1867. I've carried that tradition on. We went from 1.5 employees to 9 employees, and we write over $10 million worth of business across the state. I took a gamble, as entrepreneurs may do, and borrowed quite a bit of money to retrofit a building in the center of downtown Batavia, with no guarantee that anything would continue to go well. But thanks to the support of the community, it has gone all right, and we're very pleased to be able to have all of our employees actually in the office today, even though we're in COVID. It's been a tough road. We, of course, went to halftime and had some remote folks working. We still have the doors locked here because 2 of our employees are compromised immune-wise. And so folks can come to the door, knock on it, and we'll come out and meet with them. So that's been my personal and business life. I've served on the Genesee County Legislature. I served on the Genesee County Planning Board. I was on the Genesee Valley BOCES Board of Education for 8 years. I was on that when I was elected to the State Assembly in 2006. That happened because Charlie Nesbitt, who had been the Assemblyman after my father had served for 20 years, called me one night before Thanksgiving in 2005 and said, "Hawley, George Pataki has given me a position in his administration if I want it. I'm going to take that, and I think you ought to run for my seat." So that was right when we had borrowed all the money and initiated this new venture at the insurance office. It was 5 months after we did that, so that was not a very easy decision. I initially said no, but obviously changed my mind and have been serving now for 14.5 years. I'm the Deputy Minority Leader of the State Assembly Minority Conference. I sit on the Ways and Means Committee, the Rules Committee, the Insurance Committee, oddly enough, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and the Assembly Agriculture Committee. Veterans and Ag Committee, I've served on every day that I've been the State Assemblyman. They've tried to remove me a couple of times by asking me to take another position, and I said those are the 2 most important things to me: agriculture and veterans. So that's pretty much it, and I've enjoyed it very much serving, and I just was elected, re-elected, if you will, for another 2 years. I'm a glutton for punishment. Can't hear you back.
I got it. Zoom tells you you're muted. So Thank goodness. So that's going to lead me to the next question that I was actually going to ask later, but I'm going to ask now. You said you're a glutton for punishment. What makes you keep running? Why do this?
Well, it kind of harkens back to what kind of what's inside of you. I've always enjoyed helping people. It's what I do in the insurance business. I've never considered myself to be a salesman at all. I like to make sure people understand what it is they're purchasing, understand what's in it, talk about some of the coverages and make sure they understand that. And we've translated our motto at the insurance office from neighbor helping neighbor also to the state assembly office. We do the same thing, neighbor helping neighbor. I'm a helper kind of guy. I like people, and no matter who you are, where you come from, I like you. So that's why I serve. The most important part of my job is right back here in our community. Albany is one thing. That's where way too many bills are introduced, and we just got the call today. They want to go back and raise the taxes for those that have worked hard to care for their family, and that's unfortunately part of the philosophy in Albany and many parts of this country with government, that instead of looking for places where you can cut spending, they immediately look to raising more revenue. It's not a revenue problem that we have in the state of New York. It's a spending problem. And we've had it for years and years, regardless of party. It's hard to say no to someone. It's hard to say we have to cut your services. But especially during this pandemic, it's important to look at both sides of the balance sheet. And when we entered this year in 2020 for the budget, New York State was $6.4 billion in the deficit before the pandemic. I've had a bill that's languished in committee for years. I call it the Two New Yorks bill. And about a little over a year ago, it got a lot of play because I had a bill that was tabled in committee called the Gold Star Families Bill. Would have given free college tuition to families left behind by a serviceman or woman who died in service to his country. It was tabled. This was 2 months after we approved Dreamers, free college tuition for illegal immigrants' children. No, it's not the children's fault that they were here. I understand that. And it's a heart-wrenching thing to say no to anyone. But we just approved the Dreamer money. And they said, no, we're not going to give college tuition to folks who have lost a loved one while serving their country. Got a lot of play around the country. Teresa and I were on our way to Key West. It was April. We were taking a 6-day vacation, and I got a call from Fox News, and they said, we'd like you to be on in the morning at 6:15 to talk about your Gold Star Family Bill and what happened to it. And I said, well, do you have an outlet in Key West? And she said, well, wait a minute, I thought you could go to Buffalo or Rochester. That's what I was told. And I said, well, normally I would, but I'm on vacation. Obviously they did not, but I was on Fox News talking about that. The governor, under pressure, pulled money from one part of the budget to another, and now Gold Star families are receiving free college tuition. What does that have to do with Two New Yorks? Because we talked about the philosophy of Two New Yorks and how different it is and how we represent people, 133,000 people, each of us, all 150 assemblymen, and how very, very different the constituents are in different parts of the state of New York. And so it got a lot of play, apparently in New York City as well, the Two New Yorks bill. And I came back after vacation, and a couple of my friends from New York City, members of the majority, said, Hawley, really? Two New Yorks? How the hell would you ever make it? And so it harkens back to what I just talked about a few minutes ago. I said to them, you've got two parts of a budget. You got the revenue and the expenditure side. They said, well, we provide 64% of all the revenue for the entire state of New York City. How would you make it? I said, I'm not concerned about the revenue side. We have to get control of our spending. That's the deal. And the one guy said to me, well, if I lived where you lived, I'd be on your bill in a minute. You guys get the short end of the stick all the time. So they know And I can get into relationships in a little bit. I've brought lots of them up here to our district from New York City, and I've gone down there trying to foster relationships, positive relationships, agreeing to disagree at times, but that's what the world's all about. But do it with respect.
Whew.
Steve, given that, I'm just wondering about the tax cap that was imposed upon school districts and municipalities and how that's going to play out now that things are in dire straits financially for the state.
Yeah, the governor was given emergency power, an additional emergency power. I believe it was in March. He had lots of emergency powers already. We added, because of the pandemic, for a pandemic, for emergencies such as this, medical emergencies. It was a very difficult vote, very, very hotly debated. Two bills were proposed at one point, one bill for $40 million for the COVID pandemic in March. And the second bill was going to be for giving the governor emergency powers. That vote failed on the singular bill for 40 million. It became one bill then. And so we were asked to vote on whether we wanted to give the governor emergency powers and the 40 million. So regardless of how you voted, if you voted against it, you were voting against what I believe to be public health issues for all of the people of the state of New York. I voted for that 40 million. And in addition, of course, the governor got those emergency powers. He has the sole ability. And by the way, we've had 2 times that we proposed legislation to rescind those temporary powers, and both times those votes have failed. He has until April 1st, if he so chooses, that's in the year 2021, to continue to operate with his budget director on funding streams and expenditures, et cetera. So that 20% you're referencing, I believe, is what they have indicated they're going to withhold in terms of revenue, whether it be for school districts, municipalities, ARCs, all of the broad cross-section spectrum of service providers of services.
I guess I'm more curious about the state sort of being able to spend what they need to spend, yet imposing, like I said, a tax cap upon school districts and municipalities. And I just wonder how that really plays out.
Yeah, are you talking about the 2% property tax cap? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. That was a ludicrous thing that occurred a number of years ago. We said to locals, whether you're municipality like Alexander, where Dave is, or Kitty, where you were the superintendent in Alexander for years, we say to locals, the state says to locals, you can't do any more than 2% unless you have a majority +1 at the town level, or in the school district, the electorate votes for exceeding that property tax cap. Oh, and by the way, localities and municipalities and school districts, we're not going to make any meaningful reforms or reductions in mandates and requirements. You've still got to do all the things we tell you to do, but you can't spend any more than 2%. It was not a good idea. We were promised that there would be a meaningful mandate relief, but it never happened. So not an easy thing for sure.
So will that tax cap hold true for this upcoming year?
Well, I'm sure there will be a number of us that propose something other than that during this pandemic. So stay tuned.
Hey, Steve, this is John in Oakfield. Just to piggyback on what Kitty was saying, the concerns that I think, and I think Mickey's on this call too, I don't know about Ned, but the concerns that we have as school districts is they're almost playing a game with us. You know, they mentioned about this transportation aid that we're not going to possibly see based upon what happened last spring, although we were required to, you know, continue to feed our community, deliver food, you know, deliver materials to our families. And then all of a sudden now they want to cut 20% in state aid, and they call it a withholding, not a cut. And it's just kind of lingering out there. Obviously, this is the time of the year. I mean, every month is the time of the year for schools to budget, but obviously we're getting into the, deep of things here as far as trying to figure out where we go from here. And it is just so difficult, not only with possible testing that some districts have to do, but just keeping up with, again, these unfunded mandates. And it's just, if they're going to withhold 20% of our state aid, we're talking about $2.6 million in a $20 million budget. And it'll just crush us. And the people that lose are the students. And it's just, I know that you're doing all that you can, but just hear from us that we are struggling, we are hurting, and each and every day that goes by and we don't have answers, it's just real difficult for us to provide what we need to do for our students and our communities.
Yeah, I hear you, John. I think about a week and a half ago, we sent a letter, our conference did, to the governor relative to that funding for transportation. Okay. Yeah, this is, as you say, I do everything I can do. I'm in the minority, but I've been around long enough to have created relationships with folks who hopefully will listen. And this isn't an upstate, downstate, rural, suburban, urban issue. This is a real deal. And as you said, who are the folks being harmed the most? It's our kids and our grandkids. I don't know how you're doing it with doing remote learning. My hat is off, and I applaud the teachers, administrators, and the parents who are having to do this. But the end result of all this virtual learning, or in and out and back, will be told down in the future with regard to whether our kids really were able to have a learning environment. It certainly isn't the same learning environment that all of us grew up with. So, yeah, we have said to the governor on a number of occasions that a flat 20% cut across the board may look good and sound good because it's equal. None of it sounds good. None of it is good, but it sounds equal. But there are so many different organizations and services that are provided. A flat 20% really isn't the way to do it. Budget directors and others in charge of financing and statistics ought to be looking at more than just an easy out with a 20% cut. Some ought to receive more, and some, like education and others, ought to receive less of a cut.
Thanks, John. Oh, yeah, no, I'm not muted. And Ned is there. Did you see him? So Ned, Mickey, did you want to add anything? No.
I think John covered it pretty well.
Okay. All right, good. I did put in chat, if anyone who wants to ask a question, just unmute yourself. This is a nice small gathering, so we're able to do that, take advantage of this now. So Steve, talk about some of the wins and the loses, the frustrations and the challenges, and then those things that just make your heart soar from your time in Albany. What are both ends of the spectrum, I guess, is what I really want to hear.
Well, it's very difficult. I didn't make any list up or anything like that about wins and losses. Anytime we initiate new mandates from a legislative perspective, that's a loss. Anytime we raise taxes, that's a loss. Anytime we expand Medicaid, that's a loss for county taxpayers, because 90% of your county tax bill is from Medicaid costs. Some of the wins certainly have been working with people from a broad cross-section of life. As I mentioned earlier, I've initiated a visitation from urban folks, borough folks from the city of New York, to come up and see how other New Yorkers live, work, and play. oddly enough, all of the ones I brought up have been named Mike. Mike Dundecker from Queens, Mike Cusick from Staten Island, Mike Benedetto from the Bronx, Mike Fitzpatrick from Long Island. Don't know how that happened, but we take them to farms, we take them to schools, we take them to small businesses, we take them to farm implement dealers. We let them pat the calves at post farms or lamb farms or mooring tories. We let them talk to immigrant labor to see how it is for them as they work and live on farms in our part of the world, our part of New York. And it's an eye opener for them. I take them back to my house and put them on a lawnmower. One of the guys, Mike Dundecker, none of them have lawns except for Dundecker from Queens, who said, Hawley, I can mow my lawn with a pair of scissors. So it's a completely different world, as we all know. But certainly being able to work with people as opposed to partisan politics is something I've always tried to do. Every once in a while, I get a new person in Albany who is in charge of writing up different releases and position papers and everything. And of course, I tell them what I'm looking for, or she, and they send them back to me. And my staff calls me the teacher with a red pen. That my degree is in education, by the way. In Ohio, you get a BEd, a Bachelor of Education. It's on the wall right behind me here. So one of the things I've always tried not to do is talk about Democrats and Republicans. We talk about people when we get elected to office. And so a new one comes on, and unfortunately, a lot of people who are elected to office, especially at the state and federal level, take out their index finger and start shaking and calling people this and that and refer to party. I don't do that. But I do every time you get a new coordinator, oftentimes, and I have a new one now, that's why I'm talking about it. Something came through with liberal down Democrats from wherever. Well, that's not what we do. We can talk about downstate and upstate and talk about the different ways of life and different needs, wants, and desires. But that's a big deal. And then I go down and see them, of course, and hang out with them and see who they represent and how they live, and the fact that their assembly district might be 5 blocks long. And if you have an assembly district in the Catskills or the Adirondacks, it could take you 3.5 hours to get from one end of the district to another to get 133,000 people. Another thing that I'm proud of is the Patriot trip that we've had. Unfortunately, this year was going to be our 13th. Unlucky number 13. We didn't take it because of COVID. A World War II vet came up to me in 2006. Geez, I'm like Joe Biden. I kill myself. World War II vet Mike Paduchak from Kendall came up to me after I was first elected, and he said, "Hey, Hawley, what do you think? Is there any chance you could put together a trip for that World War II monument that's just opening? Some of us he was like a widower. He said, all the World War II guys and gals aren't going to necessarily be able to make it, but it would be a great thing if you could do something like that." So, I called Tom Reynolds, who was the congressman at the time, and I said to this guy, I'm not a federal guy, I'm a state guy. So I called the congressman, and he said, "Hawley, you're a veteran. It's the nation's capital. If you can do it or you want to do it, just go for it." So we've taken over 1,500 veterans and family members to Washington, D.C. It's probably the highlight of my year. 2 bus loads, except the second year we had 3 bus loads, 150 some odd people. I have 2 staff members and myself and their spouses who put this all together. We don't use travel agencies. We do a lot of stuff online and calls and emails. So that's really a very, very important part of giving back to the community and giving back to our veterans. We visit all the memorials, the World War I, the World War II, the Korean, the Vietnam. We go to Arlington Cemetery. We have a private tour. And we also have 4 of our veterans who participate in the actual ceremony at the laying of the wreath. That's very, very touching, as you can well imagine if you've been there or watched it. And that guy I referenced that asked me to put this together, Mike Padujic from Kendall, was one of the 4 veterans that participated in the laying of the wreath. And they went down, they did their reverence, they gave their salute, they turned around, they came up with the member of the Army. And he said to each one of the men, "Thank you for your service to our country." And he looked at Mike Padujic and he took off his expert rifleman's badge and pinned it on Mike Padujic, the guy that had asked me to start this this Patriot trip. When Mike died a couple of years ago, that medal was on his chest. So that's a big part. That's a plus. There are more pluses than minuses, and you look past things that are not necessarily in the best interests of people I represent, and you continue to work very, very hard to limit negative things.
Gosh, you got me there. So you started to talk a little bit about you don't reference Democrats and Republicans, which is a great step. It's just a good practice. But with all the polarization that we have, and this is one of the things that we put on the flyer because we thought it might be really great to hear from you. How do you minimize the polarization amongst other people, even your constituents? I'm sure you get calls and letters that are just woo. And how
No.
what do you do to help minimize the polarization so that we can start to really, and I don't, I said to somebody today, I said, I think our country is in a real crossroads sociologically. We're at a real juncture. How do we get to the point where we can all listen again and we can all not be so freaking whacked out? How's that?
FWO, freaking whacked out.
I love it.
I only know what I do, and I've kind of been through a lot of the things that I do. I respect people for the office they hold. I respect people for the fact that their constituents may be different than my constituents. I try not to use verbiage. One time I was upset with the local Gazette here, the Daily News, because they said Hawley slams Democrats. Never said that. Never anything in the release that said that, nothing in the interview. But of course, many of you may know that headlines are made up by folks in the office and they're trying to sell papers. So the media has a lot to do with it as well. And I don't use fake news and all that stuff. I wish there had been less of that. I think that, well, I'll just say this. People like people. People want to like their representatives as a person. People would also like their representative to vote in a way that represents the constituency that they serve. They're willing to overlook how they vote and how they represent them if they like them, which is kind of odd, but we just saw that in the presidential election. I believe name calling and putting labels on people and organizations just polarizes. And we need to get away from that, regardless of what your philosophy is, what party you belong to. I don't even care if people say that. I remember the Strawberry Festival when I first got elected, which is over in Albion. I don't know anything about it, but they asked me to be the MC. There's that voice again. And actually my face was there. And after that Strawberry Festival in 2006, in June of 2006, a senior citizen came up to me and said, "Mr. Hawley, is there any way you might be able to help me? My son is a career military person. The New York State Tax and Finance Department is sending him threatening letters." And I said, "Sure, come over to the office next week and we'll take a look at it." So she did. She came into the office and she had files and she said, "My friends, before I give you these, my friends have told me you may not be able to help me." And I said, why is that? She looked sheepishly down and looked up at me and said, I'm a Democrat. And I looked at her and I said, your friends are absolutely right. You'll have to leave my office. And, and she looked like this. I said, I'm kidding. Back then you could hug people. I said, I'm kidding. Come on in. I don't care what you are. And I gave her a hug and took her papers. And isn't that funny? I mean, we represent people. I hope people are registered to vote so they can participate, whether locally, state, or federal. But if you're a citizen, you get service. You're treated equally, just like anybody else. So how do you portray that? We each do our own thing. And I've tried to make that happen in my service.
So I think what I hear is that we all have a personal responsibility, and we to affect those that are in our circle of influence, to do the best that we can with that.
Correct.
That's one of those leadership capacities that not always easy, but you have to remind yourself. For me, sometimes I want to type something, so I type it and then I erase it, and I never hit send. So,
been there, done that.
What'd you say?
Been there, done that. Although sometimes I've said it and I should never have said it.
And you say, oh, why did I do that? Does anyone have any questions? Well,
Steve, it's not a question. It's more of just what I've lived seeing from you throughout Genesee County and the whole area, is you do love people, and your presence is there. When there's something going on that's meaningful, you are present. And I think that it means a lot to everybody when they see you there at events, at whatever, just being part of the community, part of all of us. It really touches you. It does touch you. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks very much. I do believe that if you're going to be a representative, you need to know the people that you represent. You need to know what they stand for, what they believe in. You need to be as much of a listener as a talker. I ring the bells at Salvation Army. I used to do it all the time when I was a Rotarian, active Rotarian, but I've expanded that, and we go all over the district ringing bells. Not as much this year. Orleans County isn't doing it. Genesee is. I'm doing, I think, Leroy this afternoon, and then up to Walmart and Brockport. Hamlin is not doing it this year at their tops because of the pandemic. But to your point, I want people to be able to come up and talk to me at church at tops at the when I get my hair cut, what little I have left. I want people to feel comfortable, and I want people to be I want to be approachable as their family member, if you will, or good next door neighbor.
So Steve, public service was in your family with your dad in the assembly. What advice do you give to someone who doesn't have that background, but who's interested in public service from an elected official standpoint, or even trying to become maybe appointed to something? What do you think of those things that someone really has to soul search about in order to maybe move forward?
Yeah, when they talk to fourth graders, that's when they, as you know, study state government, and I try to emphasize that their moms, their dads, their brothers, their uncles, their sisters, their grandparents, their aunts, uncles, whomever, anybody can be an elected official. There's no degree required. There's no background required. There's no age. Well, there are age restrictions on the lower end, obviously not at the upper end. Unless you're a judge, then you're out at 70. So I encourage these fourth graders to become well-rounded and to think about serving their neighbors and their friends. What should you be doing? People ask me that a lot, and I think that being involved in the community, so that you know the community that you're going to serve, whether it's through a service club, through a school board, whether it's at church, whether it's Cooperative Extension or Farm Bureau or whatever, United Way, become involved in the community so you know it. And then, of course, if you've served in a number of different positions, hopefully doing it well, people will know you too. And it's an integral part of wanting to be able to serve, knowing your community and knowing the folks that reside there and what their beliefs are. You'll never please all the people all the time. You hope it's 50.1% at least. But yeah, being involved in the community, I think, is a very, very important part of it. And because of the politics and the way that elections are held, you can join a political party or not, but the most important thing is to be registered to vote and to participate in voting each and every year. On mute, Peg.
I did. I didn't even have the little sign that said to unmute. Any questions from the group that you'd like to ask? I always say this is your opportunity.
Steve, what surprised you most when you first started in your role? What was it that you didn't expect?
Well, even though my dad served 20 years in the state assembly, he really never talked much about the integral parts of serving, especially in Albany. It's a very partisan area. And there's majority and minority, and there's redistricting that's going to go on next year and disenfranchisement, if you will. But the odd thing about Dad's service, he was elected in 1973 in a special election. He was a member of the majority in Albany, and everything is run by majority and minority. If I want something important passed, I go to a friend in the majority. And it doesn't matter whether it's in Albany or whether it's in Washington, and you get your friend to introduce it to hopefully help your constituents. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, most of the time. So Dad served 1 year in the majority as a member of the Republican Party down there. And then the next year was Watergate in Washington. And so he had 1 year in the majority and all the other 18 and a half years was in the minority. Although it was always relatively close when he served. And so there was more working together as opposed to such a broad difference between majority and minority members. And every 10 years, because of the census, new lines are drawn for state senators and for assemblymen and congressional folks. And oftentimes those lines are drawn for political purposes. Now I think the count politically wise, majority and minority, is 43 Republicans, and then the rest are, I think, all Democrats. Maybe, I think we got 7 socialist Democrats, new ones coming in from New York City this year that beat incumbent majority members, Democrats who've been there for years because they weren't progressive or liberal enough. So I didn't realize how much of political might there was in Albany. And so that's why it's been important for me to kind of transcend that and work around it, as opposed to shaking fists and pointing fingers. I remember when I first got down there, I got into a freight elevator where we park our cars. There are legislative elevators that go fast up and down. And then there's the baggage or freight elevator. I pushed both buttons to go up, one on the gold colored ones and one on the baggage. And the baggage one, the freight elevator, came first. There was this big guy, roly-poly guy, and he got in with me and he said, "You're that young Hawley guy, aren't you?" And I said, "I'm a guy, but I especially like that young part." And so we got in the elevator. He said, "You're not afraid and you don't mind riding on this freight elevator?" And I said, "Not at all. I'm an old farm guy from Western New York. Nothing bothers me." And he said, I won't use his name because he's passed now. He was an assemblyman from New York City. And he said, "You're going to be doing all right down here, Hawley. I knew your father well. He was a gentleman and people respected him. And I think you're going to do all right, especially riding on this elevator. So first impressions are odd. Hold on a second. But yeah, I didn't know about the politics side of it because I was used to working around this area as a county legislator. We work with each other. It's not about party, but down there oftentimes it is. But if you have a reputation of being able to get along and not being disrespectful, if you will, you get a lot farther, not just personally, but for the people you represent.
That's a great question. Nate, I think you had a question. Go for it.
Sure. Hey, thank you for your service, Mr. Hawley. It's good of you to come on. You mentioned the Medicaid mandates. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about balancing the budget and some areas that you would target. Just, again, not political, but more of a dollars and cents kind of what areas we can work on.
Sure. Without getting into specifics, because I don't have all those with me, I will just give you some broad numbers about Medicaid. And again, nothing specifically. We have in New York State a $78 billion Medicaid program. That's larger, I believe, than California and Texas combined. California and Texas individually have more population than we do. New York State opts into almost every optional program available on the a la carte menu. We can't do that. We can't survive that way. And past budgets will show that to be true. We need to take care of people in their time of need, but we're taking care of people from birth pretty much to grave. I remember meeting over when the coffee spot or whatever it was over the county building was open. I met with some medical office personnel. They wanted to meet with me because of what they've seen in Medicaid issues in their particular medical offices where they worked. And they brought all the billing and the reimbursements and everything. And the one I remember the most was a young lady who arrived at the emergency room here in Batavia 28 out of 31 days that month. She arrived by taxi, Uber, whatever, and she left by taxi. And her cell phone was also paid for. All of that was paid for by Medicaid. I just think that we need to really fine tune how we take care of people in their time, hour, week, month of need, but not all the optional programs. It's just bankrupting the state. Now, politically, a lot of folks, especially in highly populated areas, who are their constituents? Many of them are Medicaid recipients. And so it's political suicide to want to cut any of those services that are provided by the optional programs that the federal government gives us. So it's a tough state. And back to my two New Yorks again, they may have 64% of the revenue, but they got a lot more expenses than we do, but we're being held responsible for that. And I know that you all may have seen the sign down in Alabama or Arkansas or somewhere that says move to Orleans. It's a big billboard. Move to Orleans County. The most Medicaid program, the least expensive, most Medicaid programs, most Medicaid money you can have in America. And my folks and friends over in Orleans County are not happy about that. I don't know whether it's true or not. I've been told many times. I've seen the sign, but you can pretty much make all of us look like Hollywood kind of people.
I knew that people moved into New York State because of the Medicaid. I didn't know that there were signs in other places to say move here. Eek.
I do have a piece of legislation that would require a 6-month, I believe it's 90-day residency before you'd be eligible for any Medicaid programs. Again, that hasn't gone very far. It sits in committee. But when you move here to New York State, you're on the roll right away.
Mhm. Good. Are there any other questions from the group? Anybody? Just raise your hand. You know, it dawned on me, I didn't have the group introduce themselves. If you all want to just tell Steve who you are and what you do, that would be awesome. Let's start with Susan.
Gotta wake up the Bluetooth mouse to get things going. Hi, I'm Susan Patera. I actually live in Monroe County at the moment. I am the children's librarian at Richmond Memorial Library in Batavia.
Thanks. Jim.
Hi, Steve. I'm
Hi,
Jim
Jim.
Krensig. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications for the GCEDC, and I once, I think, stowed away on the Patriot trip many years ago and always appreciated that.
Awesome. All right, Kelvin.
Hi, Steve. Calvin Clemmer. I work at Merrill Lynch in Batavia as a financial advisor. I actually work with Teresa there.
Awesome. Maureen.
Hi, Steve. I'm Maureen Esterbrooks, and I work at Office for the Aging.
Nate.
Hello again. I'll just say hello. I've already introduced, and I would say for the rest of the group that Steve's son Brooks is the board chairperson of the Housing Authority. So we work closely together, and I appreciate the family focus on service.
Awesome. Lydia.
Sorry, the copier is going behind me. Hi, Steve. It's Lydia. I work for the Child Advocacy Center now. I'm a family advocate, and I just want to know, how are Ayla, Troy, and Quinn? I miss them this summer.
They're all great.
Yes. I imagine.
Those are my grandkids, by the way.
I figured. Great.
I'm over 50.
Mickey.
Hey, Steve, Mickey Edwards, superintendent at Byron Burgeon, and soon to take over as superintendent at Albion, February 1st.
Hey.
I saw you at Community Action on Saturday when we were unloading the truck. So you were busy talking, so I didn't bother you.
No, I was listening. I wasn't talking.
So there you go. There's your new superintendent in Albion.
Congratulations.
Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Roth. I'm the program coordinator for the Child Advocacy Center. I hope someday to be one of your colleagues, Steve, and you don't have to worry about it because I'm an Erie County girl.
Are you going to run for public office?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so exciting. I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to see.
Someday. My kids are still young enough that I want to focus on them, but
of course.
Act 2.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so cool. Good for you. Yvonne. Oh, introduce yourself, Yvonne. Come on.
I just had to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Steve. Yvonne Peck from Cornell Cooperative Extension and Leadership Genesee. Class of 02. Woohoo.
Woo. Trisha.
I've gotten many hugs from Steve, by the way, so I know how that is, and I miss those in public. Sorry, I had to put that out there.
Yeah.
Was it me? I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
Hi, Steve. I'm Trisha Doty. I'm the Assembly Supervisor at Liberty Pumps. And I've actually seen some history pictures of your family. I used to live over in Ted Hawley's duplex.
Oh.
Yeah, and so in his office there back in the brewery, he had a lot of the history of the, the farm and, before the thruway was actually put in and stuff. So very cool.
You never know. Sarah, morning.
Good morning. Hi, Steve. This is Sarah Stockwell from the Genesee County Chamber of Commerce.
And her kids are doing their remote learning today. So, Teresa. You there, Teresa?
The T is.
Well, we got Teresa Kale.
Oh, I'm on here twice,
I'm here.
Peggy, because I'm trying to trick my IT into doing what I want it to do.
That's okay. All right, Teresa Kale, take it away. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was away. I don't know what I'm supposed to take away.
Just,
I couldn't hear. I'm having a lot of internet trouble, which is why I'm leaving my video off.
Okay.
So it's breaking up a little bit.
Maybe introduce yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Teresa Kale. I'm the Education Coordinator and the Decentralization Grant Coordinator at Go Art at Genesee Orleans Regional Arts Council.
Thank you. Gavin, are you there, Gavin?
Yes, I am. Good morning. This is Gavin Townsend. I work in real estate, and the reason why my video is not on is I'm on a construction site as we speak, and it's kind of loud and crazy. But thanks so much for your service, Steve, and for joining us today.
Kathleen, are you there?
I'm here. Kathleen Geiger, I work for Smart Design Architecture in Genesee County.
She works with Ed Smart. I can't read this next one. Who's next? Chris, well, I see Chris Clark. Are you there, Chris? Nope. What about Karen?
Karen said she didn't have any video or microphone today.
Oh, okay. Who am I missing, Yvonne? I can't see everybody.
Unmute. I have everyone in a strip, so I'm not seeing what you're seeing. Sorry.
If I missed anyone, just let me know because I can't see everybody. I can't tell.
Well, I'm Kathy Yulee. I'm Program Coordinator at Genesee Justice, and I am the graduate of LG 17, the greatest class.
Did I get
Dave Miller? I'm the supervisor for the town of Alexander. I served with Steve in the Army Reserve back in the early 70s.
Huh.
And then when he went into insurance, I think he showed up at my door and tried to get me to be one of his first clients, which I actually took him up on. So, and we're still one of his clients.
Awesome. All right. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Oh, Karen Leffel, IT Tech for Genesee County DSS. She put it in the chat box. You go, Karen. Awesome. And Chris Clark's mic is not working. And Chris works for First Student Transportation. All right, I think I got everybody. So I want to thank you, Steve, for coming today and being part of this and sharing your perspectives of our government in the state. And please, I think Steve is always willing to answer questions. I know you're a really busy guy. So if you have something else that you want to ask, let me know and I'll send it off to Eileen and she'll get the answers for you. You have a wonderful holiday, Steve.
Happy holidays to all of you. Leadership, these leadership courses are unbelievable. No matter who you are, where you come from, you meet so many different folks with different backgrounds and experience and education. So thank you all for being part of this leadership. Peg has been there from the beginning and she's to be applauded as well. So make sure you send her a present for Christmas. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas, Steve. Thank you. I'm sure he's got a lot going on today, so.
I'm going to take a picture of the class and put it up on Facebook.
Oh, please do. Everybody smile nice.
Ready?
Yeah. Oh, wait. I'll take a picture of you. Oh, wait. I'll take a picture of you too, Steve. Hold on.
Oh, I'm a little shy. I'm a little shy.
Oh, wait. Gotta take them. I gotta take that off. That's terrible. Oh, yeah.
Take your time, Peg.
Got it. Oh, yeah.
Take your time, Peg. See you guys. Have a great day.
Got it.
See you guys. Have a great